Hello. Uh, Hi. Sorry. Is someone here? I am just kicking off the live and I've never done a live before, so I have absolutely no idea if anyone is here, and if I'm just talking to myself. I think there are 3 people here, if I'm not wrong. It doesn't show me who you are. If you are here, please say hello in the comments so that I know I'm not talking to myself. And yeah, say hello, where you're from. APAV, hello. Okay, there are people here. Hello, where are you from? This is fun. Hi, Devesh, I'm good. Oh my gosh, there's like quite a few people here. I really wasn't sure if anyone would turn up, so this is already nice. Hello from India, currently in France. What is the time? Must be morning for you, right? My dog is being a bit annoying because he does want to go outside, so don't mind. From USA, nice. Obviously, if you follow me, I'm in Australia, so it's currently 6 p.m. I had to keep delaying the live because I finished work much later than expected. I wish there was some like background music behind this because it's a bit quiet. Maybe I'll play some music. Anyway, I'll just hang out for a few minutes and see if other people join. But the idea of this live was just to answer all the product, career, tech related questions that you guys have. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but I also have some questions that are commonly asked around product management. So I'm going to be going through those if you don't have any live questions. But I'm pretty unprepared, I'll be honest. Originally, I actually wanted this to be very educational and I was working on a bit of a presentation, but I was optimistic with the amount of time I thought I had and I didn't finish it. So pretty last minute, I changed this to just be like a Q&A. So I hope it'll still be, why is there, it was a weird filter on. But yes, I've never really attended a YouTube live before. I've done some TikTok lives, so I kind of have an idea of how those go, but I've never been on a YouTube live, so I don't really know how people do this. Can you please delve into the realm of product sense, starting out with the hard questions? That's a great question. Yeah, so I guess I think I'll just, like, do I give it another minute? Let me have some tea and then I'll jump into my thoughts. I find it a bit odd just talking to a camera with no one else talking back. But I will, yeah, I think product sense is a really interesting concept to talk about. How does a product manager code? I have lots of things to say about PMs and coding. So I'll get into that as well. What tool and what is the motive of coding? Okay, good questions. I'll start with the product sense one, and like keep in mind, this is all my opinion, right? I think if you are in the world of product management, you'll know that there is no right or wrong, and everyone has like a very different way of doing things, a different way of navigating problems, a different way in which they think about the art of product management. So I think that's what makes this whole field so complex and challenging, is like there's no playbook. You can see how other companies and how other products have done things and maybe how they've become successful, but they've all done it in such a different way. So I think for me personally, product sense comes with time, in that the more practice you have launching products, seeing how they respond in the market, learning from customer feedback, tweaking your products, that all of that, including how you work with engineering and design and all the other cross-functional partners that you need to work with, I think all of that contributes to your product sense. But ultimately, I think your product sense is probably just more of like an intuitive feeling about whether something is going to be successful or not. And I always say that I think data, depending on your accent, it is in, oh my God, Nick. Shit, okay, I think that's my friend Nick. Unless that's someone else pretending to have his name. Sorry, I got distracted. I think ultimately, yeah, product sense is kind of having an intuitive feeling that something is the right thing to do. And as much as we can lean on data-driven decisions, I always say that so much of your judgment as the PM for a product comes back to you knowing your product, your customers, your market, your competitors, and just having like an intuitive sense, which, you know, engineers will hate that. But having an intuitive sense that something is a good thing to do, and it's kind of part and parcel with experimentation. So if you work in a company or especially a startup that is open to experimentation, I think that's when you can really like practice your product sense. So yeah, I think it's more just an intuitive, a sensible judgment that you have based on your knowledge and your experience of a particular product area. Sorry, I'm not keeping up with these questions, and I need to keep my answers succinct. Is it tough to leave your job? How do you overcome that fear? I think this is a very personal question, in that everyone is going to be so different when it comes to how they handle something like that. For me personally, I have a very high risk tolerance. I have left more jobs than my parents would ever have liked me to. And I have never really had any problems leaving jobs. If anything, I've always felt it's always been harder for me to stay in a job, because for me, I see opportunity everywhere. And I see sometimes for me personally, staying in a job is more of I'm losing more by doing that, because I'm not doing all these other things I could be pursuing. So I think a way in which you can think about overcoming your fear of leaving the job is thinking about what will you gain by doing so. Don't think about it as you leaving something, but think about it more as you're going towards something. And I think it's probably easier to not have that fear if you have a bit of a plan, if you have a safety net. I think that's always important. I have definitely quit my job in the past with not much of a plan. I have used my life savings when I was building my second startup, and I didn't have an income. So I may not be the best person to ask about overcoming that fear, but basically it's how will you know unless you do it and you try. And jobs that, I mean, the current economy is questionable, but you can always get another job, right? So that's the thing that I always come back to, is I can quit my job, I can go and try something else. I know that I can always get another job. And I think that comes down to having confidence in yourself and your ability that you eventually will find something else. So think about it like that. I think I missed some questions. So let's see. How does a product manager code? So first and foremost, we don't. High tides and good vibes. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about where you're coming from with that question, or what role you might be in, or what you're considering going, where you're coming from, because product managers shouldn't code. Having a good technical sense is very useful, but product managers shouldn't code. I mean, there's always, when I say shouldn't, there's caveats to that. If you're a small startup and you're wearing the product hat and the engineering hat and the founder hat, yeah, you're going to do everything. But in a very traditional sense, product managers shouldn't be coding. So that's my short answer. If you want me to dive into that a little bit more, I can definitely do that. But I'm going to keep going with some of the other questions. So Virender, you said, I just got laid off last month and I want to make a pivot in my career as a product manager, but I don't have the right experience. Okay, so originally the topic of my live was going to be how to create your own product experience. 1 second, I need to let my dog out. I'm a very home work from home outfit today. So sorry, the question was, yeah, you don't have the right experience. So why don't you, if you're still there, Verenda, do you want to share what your experience is? Because I don't want to just share some random generic advice. If you want to share what your experience is, then I can try and give you a more specific answer. But generally speaking, I will just say that there is no right experience to get into product. And I think that is such a misconception. I have worked with product managers who used to be lawyers, who used to be journalists, who obviously used to be designers or engineers, which is a very typical pathway. I have also worked with someone who is a product person who used to be an aerospace engineer. Okay, so I have so much to say on the topic of not having the right experience, because you can learn the product skill set. So think about what else you have. So as an example, are you really interested in getting a product role in a specific company or in a specific industry? If so, do you have experience in that industry already? So can you actually bring domain knowledge? Because that is harder to acquire, and you can go and learn the product manager skill set and toolkit much more easily. So let me know a bit more about what experience you have and what kind of product role you're interested in. Big company, startup. Yeah, just give me a little bit more. I'm just going to click on. I think I left my own live for a second. Can you tell that this is my first time? I'm going to just try and click on something. So I can click on your questions. I don't know what that's going to do, but let me try. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, there we go. That's very cool. All right, SMKJ. How do you go about finding the right idea or problem to solve for? If I want my SaaS startup, how should I find the right idea to work upon? Easiest answer to that is, what problems do you have? That is the best place to start for many reasons. I need to open the door for my dog. He is going crazy in the background. Please give me 1 second. I'll be back. I knew that was going to happen. So start with your own problems. And the reason for that is, I mean, if you've personally encountered a problem and you haven't found the right solution for it, maybe there are other people who also have experienced that problem. So that is one reason. But the second reason, and the one that I think is actually most important, is you need a lot of persistence to like build your own thing. And if you are solving something that is meaningful to you, then you are most likely to stick through all the challenges that you will encounter along that way. So that's one idea I have, is firstly, start with a problem you have, or a problem you have just found in your own life. Maybe it's even problems that you have seen friends and family and people that you know have. Basically, it's something you have encountered in your own world. And then that's one. Now, I get a lot of my inspiration for startup ideas from other countries. So I have maybe the luxury of having grown up in Australia and New Zealand, which, you know, compared to the rest of the world, are relatively small countries. And oftentimes, new products, new services, new businesses take a long time to come to us. And so for me, I've always found looking at overseas or global markets and global company startups operating on a global scale and seeing a really cool idea or product or service happening somewhere else and thinking maybe we could do that here, and almost being like that first mover on this side of the world in the Southern Hemisphere. So maybe think about ideas or companies, products you have seen working in other countries, and see if they exist in your market. And even if they do, maybe there is a way in which you can find a way to make it a little different, right? So no idea is going to be brand new. I think we all know that at this point in time, everything is taken in some capacity. So yeah, I would just say think about how you might be able to further improve something that already exists. But more than anything, I think if you want to find the right idea to work on, so just be very open all the time. All the time. I think once you start thinking about everything as a opportunity for you to solve a problem, then you might find ideas in unexpected places when you're just living your life day to day. Sorry, it was such a long answer. I'm so behind on these questions. Oh my goodness. I keep leaving this stream. Okay, where was I? Oh my goodness. Okay. I feel like I'm behind. All right, let's see. High tides. Is it too much responsibility being a PM? I mean, define too much. Define too much. I would say it's chaotic. It can be quite a lot of responsibility for sure. And ultimately, it really depends on your scope of ownership. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's too much. It's probably the right level of responsibility for the role. When you're first starting your product career, you might look after one product or one feature, and you'll have one team. And if you are new and early in your career, that might seem like too much. But as you spend a few years in that might be very manageable. And so suddenly it's not too much. So it's all subjective as well, depending on where you're at in your career and how comfortable you're getting in the product role. I don't know if my friend Nick is still here. If that's him, it would be weird if it wasn't him. Hold on. It is him. I'm just going to snap him. He's a loser. Okay. Already answered that one. Any books that I recommend on product sense? Okay. This might not be necessarily a product sense book, but my favorite book, I think just my favorite book in general, is the Netflix book. And I feel like not enough people talk about the Netflix book. The Netflix book is called This Will Never Work. Netflix book. And I highly recommend you read it. Even if it's not, even if you're not interested in product management, which you might not, I don't know why you're here. It's such an interesting book. If you use Netflix, if you use streaming services, it's an incredible book. If you're interested in entrepreneurship, startups, and product management, engineering, it is such an incredible book. I think it's a very good book that touches on product sense because it takes you through the whole journey of like where the idea came from and how they scaled that business and how it started as one thing and turned into something else. And I think all of that is ultimately its product sense. I don't know if I've ever seen any books that are just on product sense. I mean, there's the typical books you would have heard of, like Hooked. I don't know, is that coming up backwards? Yeah, Hooked. And then I've got another one. Oh, this is a very typical one as well. Whoops. Which you must have heard of, which is called Inspired. And this is how to create tech products that customers love. So I think there are some books like that that are also helpful. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. I'll note that down as a question and maybe make like a video about it to answer more specifically at some point. Let's see. Can you share your experience when you didn't get a job and was laid off for a few months? Fortunately, and I feel very fortunate to say I haven't had that experience. I'm weird like that though. Like, this is gonna sound really weird to say out loud, but for me, if I was to get laid off, and I know everyone's circumstance is very different, because I have quite a strong entrepreneurial side, for me, getting laid off from my job would be the biggest sign that I should be doing something else. That's just how my brain is wired. When something seemingly bad happens, I always interpret it as something positive, or I use it as a sign. But I know that everyone has different circumstances and financial commitments, and there are so many other concerns that come with getting laid off. So I can't share my own personal experience, but if I think about being in that position and how I've seen other people navigating it, I think when you have that time off, not having a job, obviously you're looking for the next one, I'm sure. But think about it as like you will never have that time again. When do you ever have free time all the time, right? There's always something. There's work, there's school, you're studying, there's always commitments. So when you have some time off in between looking for your next job, maybe think about what you can do to upskill yourself. What is something you have always wanted to learn, but you never had time to do? What is an idea that you had that you never got to work on because you never had the time to do it? And let's just talk about product management in particular. If you got a job, maybe it was a product job or not, you got laid off, or you're looking to get into product and you have some time, use that time to just try and build something. So my number one tip for someone who wants to get into product and doesn't have the right experience is to make your own experience, try and build something. And I don't mean become a coder, I don't mean develop. There are so many other ways to pursue a business idea, which let me know if you want me to talk a little bit more about that. I have a video coming up about that soon. But yeah, think about how you can use that time to fill gaps, to explore opportunities and other curiosities you had. I feel like that has to be one of the most beneficial ways of leveraging free time. Okay, where am I? Not too bad. Okay, I'm a project manager managing products. I got through the interview process for head of product development. What advice would you give me so I can stand out from those with the title and experience? It's a great question. So, a clarification, you mentioned you're a project manager. Now, I'm not sure if in my opinion, and it's not just an opinion, I think it is fact, is there's a difference between, okay, maybe this is where your question is coming from. So are you saying that you've managed products, so essentially you've done a PM's role, but you're actually a project manager, not a product manager? I think that's what you're trying to say, is because you haven't had the product manager title. So first and foremost, if I'm interpreting that correctly, let me just see if you've responded. No. If I'm interpreting that correctly, then I would say your title on your CV or your resume should represent the work you actually did. And so when you're thinking about your next opportunity, if the work that you truly did was managing those products, then you should title that role product manager, not project manager, because a project manager doesn't manage products. So if you're worried about titles and things like that, change your title to what you actually did and what you're kind of aspiring to do. What else is there? I think with a head of product role, it becomes so much more than just about the products. So like early in your product career, your product manager's skill set is about the product development lifecycle and managing trade-offs and working with engineers and prioritization. And it's very much, a tangible skill set to do with like your actual product. But as you progress through your product career, especially in a head of product role, the amount of time you spend thinking and working on the product, depending on the size of the company and everything, is shifts. You spend probably the majority of your time dealing with people, making longer term plans, building teams, communicating with those teams, building team culture and all of that. So it's a very different skill set. So if you have spent your time managing products, and I mean, I don't know enough about. Oh, okay, thank you. You said I did get the question right. If you have only spent the majority of your time actually managing products, there might be a gap with managing people, designing teams, growing teams, building teams, making long-term strategy decisions, pricing, revenue, business model, like that all comes into it. So I think you would want to try and focus on those things, because that is what is more important when you're in a head of product role, not so much the managing of the product, because every company is different. And I'm going through this right now. I'm head of product, but I don't actually have a product team yet. I've got the assistance of one of our product interns at the moment, but we're all kind of doing everything. But it means I need to balance working with my designer and my development team and doing the hands-on product stuff with also the long-term plans and a lot of external communication and figuring out what the growth of the team looks like. So it's a mixed bag when you're one person. But yeah, that's what I would have to say. I'm just going to have to move on to the next question. I've been working as a Salesforce developer. Oh, right. So your previous question was how you don't have the right experience and you want to get into product. So you've been working as a Salesforce developer for 2 years and you applied for several roles and have not landed interviews. My dog wants to come back inside. Please give me 1 second. Shouldn't have to leave now. I've been working as a Salesforce developer. So I actually know quite a lot about Salesforce. Fun fact, I used to manage the Salesforce integration at my it was one of my products for many years. And I actually grew to learn a lot about Salesforce. So you have a very in-demand skill set, that's for sure. So look, I think first and foremost, without knowing too much about you, and it's hard to say why you may not have landed interviews, right? There's so many things. It's your resume and CV would be one of them. Like, how are you pitching yourself? If you've been a developer, but you want to move into product, there are certain ways in which you need to present your resume. Secondly, I think it's trying to make the transition as small as possible. So are there product roles within Salesforce that you can move to, especially in the area of Salesforce that you're familiar with? Because I know there's multiple Salesforce products. Maybe if you are, let's say, hypothetically, you work on Service Cloud and then you apply for a PM role or an APM role for HubSpot or Zendesk or ServiceNow, because those companies have products that are customer service products. So because you worked on that as a developer at Salesforce, and Salesforce is a leader in that market, you bring some domain knowledge. So think about that background knowledge that you already have, and talk more about that versus trying to apply for a PM role in a totally different space and you're going from developer to product. But I mean, ultimately, look, it's going to depend on how you're talking about yourself. You may not have landed interviews for silly reasons, like it's the economy right now. There are so many reasons. But I would say you'd need to pitch yourself as being quite business savvy if you're going from like developer to product. APM roles are very competitive. I know a lot of the big companies that do APMs, they're probably only hiring a very small number of people for those. But hey, you could also consider like a business analyst role. Business analysts work closely with developers. It's a natural transition from BA to product. So, if you're not having success with PM and APM, maybe consider business analyst or something like that. You could also consider very technical product roles. So products that require the product manager to have, not to code, but to have a very, like maybe it's I'm trying to think of what kind of product, like a security product or something that is not very like consumery and needs you to be quite technical. Like I used to work on integration products, and most of the work with integrations is behind the scenes. We had very little UI, and having technical knowledge and being a developer would be useful. Okay, I'm gonna move on. I got into this business role. Oh, thank you. Say thank you to High Ties and Good Vibes. Could you share your insights about technical product management? I feel very torn on this label because in some ways I feel like product management is just product management. There's no technical or non-technical. It just depends on your product, your industry, and to some extent your users. So for example, I worked on integration products, which was fairly technical product space. But then I also worked on platform products and APIs and webhooks and things like that, which I didn't enjoy. But dog is being annoying. But a platform product or APIs or webhooks and stuff, the end user of those is a developer. And so I wouldn't say that was a technical product management role, but it required me to really have empathy for someone who was a developer. And I've never been a developer. So how can I really know what a developer is looking for? You know what I mean? So there's that side of it. Yeah, I don't really know what technical product management is. Like I feel like it's just product management. So I wouldn't get too worried about that. Sometimes companies do post roles that say technical PM, and I think they are just alluding to a product that is more technical. It's a bad explanation, but basically what I just said before, a product that will require you to understand maybe how data flows between systems. The end user is quite technical. Like it's not just a simple, B2C app or something like that. Anyone else's dog eat almonds? Okay. Let's see. Okay. I worked for oh, right. Priyanka, you asked a question. I don't know if you're still here because this was like 20 minutes ago. Oh my gosh. So many questions. I'm so happy so many 17 of you are here. This is like amazing. Priyanka, you just post your question where you type this question and then I can put it on here if you're still here. Okay, Pat, APAV. I worked as a PM for a few years. Now I want to apply for senior manager, product manager. How different is senior? I'm coming out with a video soon on different PM levels. So the transition from PM to senior PM, every company is a bit different, and labels are labels, right? Labels are labels. So do not get too caught up on labels. But what I'm getting from this is you want to progress. Abby, stop. So the biggest, I would say there's largely a very gradual and small difference between PM and senior PM. So if you've worked as a PM for several years, you're quite comfortable with that, go for it. Like absolutely go for it. The real difference kicks in between, oh my goodness, the one time I'm doing a live and I'm getting bothered. Happy, stop. No more, stop. Apologies. The real difference in your skill set kicks in when you start managing people and start managing like a portfolio of products. So yeah, the difference I would say between PM and senior PM is that you should be more comfortable thinking more longer term, right? You're no longer just thinking about, oh my goodness, no, go away. Enough. The biggest difference, apologies, is lost my train of thought. Is being able to think more long term. So you're no longer just thinking about your feature, and you're not just thinking about how your team is going to develop that feature. You need to think ahead, even if that's 1 quarter ahead, 6 months ahead. So that's one thing. Secondly, I think as a senior PM, you should start to really start to be in a place where you can establish yourself a little bit more as an authority, not officially, but as an authority or an influence over a particular area. So maybe you're the go-to person for something. I think kind of showing that you have knowledge about a particular space is very good, because you're no longer just working in your own little corner on your feature or your product. Like you're expanding yourself beyond just your immediate team. So that's another thing, is you should be more comfortable and able to collaborate with other PMs, other teams, other cross-functional partners, where sometimes when you're a PM looking after a small feature or one product, someone else, like you might not have that much external interaction. So that's another thing. And I think being able to possibly look after multiple products and multiple teams is another thing. This isn't like, it's not a mandatory thing, because it depends. You could look after one product that's really complex, or you could look after a few different features that aren't too complex, and it like all kind of balances out. So it really depends. But those are some of the things I would say, but it's a fairly natural progression, and I wouldn't say there's too much difference between PM and senior PM. Wow, I need to get faster. Hi, Nika. What is your advice for new PMs in B2B e-commerce, where it's difficult to get a hold of the actual customer for insights? Okay, such a good question, because I actually worked in e-commerce, and I worked in B2B, but I actually did have access to customers. So I think this question applies to any B2B product. So I guess I'm curious why it's difficult to access customers. Because whether your customer is a big company or they're individual people, so B2B or B2C, ideally you still have some kind of access to the customer. And, I worked at Zendesk, which was, it's a pretty, like all our customers were pretty big B2B customers. And at the very least, and depends on the maturity of your company, maybe, at the very least, we always had customers that were like very vocal in our forums online, customers who were very active and always gave us feedback. So we knew that we could contact them. But I understand what you mean though, because we also had customers who, like, we had very low response rates to any external communication we sent out. So yeah, I would say all you really need for B2B is you need to find a very small number of very active and engaged customers. So sometimes we want to talk to like lots of customers and try and have that large span. I would say that's less important in B2B, and it's more important to talk to a few customers who you can go very, very deep with. So maybe, yeah, I'd be keen to understand if you are still here and if you oh, you are here. Hello. I'm here. I did. Sorry, I don't know what that I did was. Yeah, so maybe like is the size and scale of your company, do you have access to like researchers? I know this is a luxury, like not all companies have that. Do how do you collect how do customers give you feedback at the moment? Because even though you as a PM might not be able to get in touch with them, you will still have customers who are reaching out to your support team to get help with issues, right? So maybe try and go via teams who naturally are exposed to customers because that's part of their job, like customer support teams. Um, Try that. Basically, like if you can't directly access the customer, try and find other teams internally and like go through them and just try and focus on a smaller number of customers, if they are B2B. But I mean, I've worked mostly in B2B and we still always manage to find at least a few customers to talk to. So it's just about finding the right channel. Okay. Mm, 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 mm. Oh, okay. Struggling with competency format interviews. Your enthusiasm and energy were great. However, sometimes it's made it hard to find and clarify your answers. Oh, okay. Interesting. Um, hmm. Maybe, well, enthusiasm is great because it can definitely go the other way where you maybe have the right answers, but yeah, some people are naturally not enthusiastic in an interview setting or whatever. Um, I think if you're getting feedback that there's lack of clarity in your answers, maybe you prep yourself for having like a structure in which you answer the question. And maybe that, like making assumptions here, but maybe that if your thoughts are not articulated in a good sequence or in an easy to understand way, something like a structure that you know yourself will help you. So I had I did some really challenging product interviews a couple of years ago and I did so much preparation for them and I've actually forgotten the structure of how I would approach product strategy questions, but check out this website. Let me post it. It's I've definitely shared this many times in the past and they have really good practice, amazing like practice interview questions, mock. They have a YouTube channel which is free. Actually, I'm just going to link the YouTube channel because you do not need to pay for anything. And it's so good. And where is my mouse gone? I've lost my mouse. Here it is. I'm going to post it here. I just pasted in the comments, but it's called Try Exponent, is a YouTube channel, and they have some really good ways in which they do mock interviews and like structure their answers. So I would say spend some time going through that. Um, As a PM in a startup, that was your feedback when the CEO comes to you and tells you the game revenue The game revenue is not equals to salary employees, despite we launched the game 3 months ago. So my first thought there is were there targets or KPIs that were set that were not met? Because in that, putting aside employee salaries part, which is a bit ridiculous, if there was a target that was set with product involvement and that wasn't met, that's a very different conversation. So I guess it depends on where this person is coming from. Whether salaries are being paid for or not, that's not your problem. So sounds like a bit of an ass, is what it sounds like to me. What else can I say about this? Yeah, so I would say back to them, can I see where are the targets that we set? Where were the expectations that we set that we would be making X amount of money in 3 months? You can only really ask for that, right? Looking back. And then maybe you can share feedback to make it more productive going forward. Like, is there product feedback that you have received from the players or users of your game? Yeah, not fantastic. Sometimes I think founders, if this person is a founder or like in that level, I think sometimes comments can be a little bit emotional. Let's see. Which product management networks would you recommend me to join online or in person in Melbourne? Ooh, are you in Melbourne? Because I never ever have anyone in any of my content that I know of that's from Melbourne. So meetup.com is great. I would just jump onto meetup.com. I don't know post-COVID how active the meetups are anymore, but there used to be some really good product meetups. I can't remember the names of them, but if you go to meetup.com and look for product meetups, I'm sure the top ones will rank. And my old company Zendesk, they used to host a lot of really good meetups as well. Some product specific, some not. I think if you can get along to any like Mind the Product, they used to do an event in Melbourne every year. Post-COVID, honestly, I don't know. I just don't go to events anymore. I love working from home and I'm just a homebody. So I just don't go to that kind of stuff. So I'm sorry, I don't know. I have personally been thinking about creating some kind of community. Like, it wouldn't be in person. Well, maybe it would extend to in person, but like some kind of potentially, like, I guess it would have to be a Slack or Discord community for stuff like this, because I don't get a chance to answer questions like this often. And maybe there are other people who can also help answer questions like this. So yeah, let me know. Would that be interesting? Because I'm kind of up for starting that, not necessarily a meetup, but like a community for PMs. Because I don't really know of any super strong ones. I think Australia just lacks that kind of stuff in general. There seems to be limited opportunities for APM roles in Australia. 100% agree. Would you recommend me to venture to global remote opportunities? You're 100% right. I don't see a lot of APM roles in Australia ever. Global, I mean, it depends. Why are you interested in an APM role? Is that the only thing you're exploring? Or is there a reason why APM appeals to you? Aside from APM, like I said to someone else, I actually think BA roles are really good and what's the word? Not looked at highly enough, but I think getting into a business analyst role is one of the best ways to transition to product. So maybe consider that, because there would be a ton of BA roles in Australia, like a ton. Think of all the banks we have, all the universities we have. But I'm not too familiar with remote hiring, remote jobs, honestly, no longer. I just haven't been keeping up with that. So I cannot really answer that one. Can content creator be a good product management experience? Being a content creator can be a good experience for anything and everyone. I don't know if you all have seen how many videos there are on YouTube now of how content creation or how YouTube changed my life with someone with less than X 100 followers. The smallest audience, like the audience size doesn't even matter. I think if people are not creating content now, you are quite literally doing yourself a disservice. You are you're keeping yourself from being discovered, but for potential opportunities in the future. You're preventing yourself from being connected with people who you could make great connections with. So yeah, I mean, if depends what your content is about, right? So if you mean should you be a content creator to talk about product stuff, why not? Absolutely. I don't think there's any downsides to content. I think what you could do is you could document your product experience. That's kind of what I did when I first started. You could also, if you wanted to be more specific, you could you could do like product reviews, like, and that can help build product sense, right? Or you can at least like articulate your product thinking. So pick a random product, pick a product you like, pick a product you've never used, and just critique it. And like, that could be fun. You could even critique it on a live, and doing a live is such an easy way to create content, which I've just realized. So yeah, absolutely. And I think it helps you. I think content helps people in ways that they don't realize, in that if you become really serious about it, it helps you with your time management. It helps you to understand what problems people have, which, to someone else's question earlier, how do you find a good startup idea? Through people's problems and your own problems. And I've come across so many problems just based on the questions people ask me in my content. So yeah, only good things about starting content. Oh, you've been a BA for a few years. Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, so obviously natural transition for you. I mean, the economy is obviously one thing, but I think in Australia, especially right now, there's just not a whole ton of product roles in general. So hopefully that improves through the rest of the year. Oops. Oh, your name is Elaine. Yeah, your name did confuse me, but it was quite funny. Interesting. Depends what you mean. I have actually been looking at stuff like this myself, because now I'm in a position where I have to be across like pricing and making decisions around that and figuring out how it's going to impact company targets and goals and revenue and all of that. So I am actually in the process of myself trying to find some really good resources around this. I haven't looked too much yet, but I reckon there will be some pretty good stuff on like you know how there is a I think it's a Harvard course that's online and it's free, and it's called CS50, and that's like an intro to programming. I think Harvard would have, or some of those top business schools would have some free like courses online. So that's what I was going. That's where I was going to look. I haven't looked yet, but I would start there. Yeah. Should you believe second-handed research insights? What is second-handed? Because secondary research is very valid. I think it's always good to validate. So if you have second-hand research, which I'm assuming just means not coming directly from you, then yeah, maybe you don't solely, depends on how big of a decision are you making. If it's like you're trying to decide where I don't know, something very small to do with a specific product feature, maybe it's sufficient to just rely on secondary research. If it's a more significant decision about whether you invest in a whole new feature or product in the first place, or whether you change how something is done, like, I think it depends on the impact and the amount of change. So try and validate the secondary research. Sorry, I'm stuffing my face. Most online courses only teach PM frameworks and theories. Yes. Do you know of any website? This is a great question. It's actually something I find you mostly just learn on the job. And I reckon, so firstly, no, I don't really know of any resources, to be honest. I'm trying to think if I could make a video about this, but it would be difficult without disclosing. If I could find a way to like not disclose the actual product and company, maybe I can find a way. But I don't know of any resources. However, I think this is one of the biggest challenges with getting into product is that you can learn all the theories and all the frameworks, like you say, but it's not real. And getting the real experience hands-on on the job is where the majority of product learning comes from. And so if in place of finding, like if you're not in a product role where you cannot get that experience hands-on right now, I think you need to try and create that experience for yourself. And I'm going to go back to what I previously have said a few times, which is try and, if you're trying to figure out how a particular framework applies, think of your own idea, and you don't have to go and build it. You don't need to code or anything, but just try and apply it to your own potential product idea. I think that's one of the best ways to do it. Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything else that, there's not like, but you're 100% right. There's not many like case studies. I actually really haven't seen any. Surely there's something. Maybe look at medium.com. I think Medium is a very practical, platform, like where people post very practical and tangible experiences that they have had with their own jobs and their own career. So try medium.com because someone might have published something on there about a particular product. Just wanted to know, since there are so many product management cohorts and yes, is it worth going to product for someone like me? So your question is that because there are so many ways to learn product, is it even worth getting into a product career? Is that what you're saying? Are you trying to say that it's so accessible? Yeah. I don't think it matters if it's fresh or not. I think it matters if the reason you want to get into product and whether, it's still a very relevant and in-demand discipline. So for that reason, yes. It doesn't matter how many, to the earlier question, it doesn't matter how many courses and theoretical learning someone does about product. Because it really has how you apply it. So I think a lot of people are trying to get into product now because it's more talked about. People understand it a little bit more. It's still a little bit hard to explain sometimes, but yeah, I think it's still a very good career path. And it's one that is so well-rounded and it can lead to so many other things. So absolutely. How to get a PM job in Australia? That's a very vague question. I cannot answer that. Hello. I started my career from BA to PO. I'll be at PM, about to start PO, but I'll be looking after and shaping strategy for 3 products. Nice. I mean, I always say, like, define good career move. I'm guessing you're saying, like, is this a good progression if you're trying to advance in your career? I would say yes. Just objectively from what you've described, yes. PM, about to start PO. I'm not sure what you mean there. You started your career from business analyst, product owner. Do you mean you are a PO about to get into PM? So I personally have never really worked anywhere where the company had a POs and PMs. So I'm not too familiar with it, and I think it can just be done by a PM. Like, I think it's just one role. It's a very minor difference in responsibilities. I'll be looking after and shaping strategy for 3 product. But yeah, to that point, like, exposure to shaping strategy, long-term direction, that is great exposure. So from that, it sounds right. What are some certifications you recommend? Tools, new languages as you grow in your PM career. So yeah, this is an interesting one. I personally really leverage learning from others. So there aren't any specific tools. Oh, actually, I lied. There is one tool, but it's kind of like learning from others. Let me send a link. It's a bit expensive. And so if you work at a company that is willing to pay for it, please make them pay for it, because I think it's too expensive for anyone to pay themselves. But they do have some free things on here as well, some free artifacts. So in terms of a tool, as I've progressed in my career, this has been really helpful, because reforge.com, they've basically got different courses, and they actually have like templates and examples of how companies create strategies and roadmaps and pricing models and lots of different artifacts. And this has been really helpful as I've grown. They also talk a lot about how to, like, the different skill set you need once you go from managing products to managing teams and people. So yeah, a lot of things that go beyond just like the tangible product. I found Reforge really good. If I just quickly jump into, sorry, my mouse is, so if I go to courses, and I'm not an advocate of people paying for courses, by the way, so I'm not suggesting you go and pay for a course. But yeah, they've got like product growth, monetization, generative AI, business and finance fundamentals. To the earlier question someone asked, I only just found this now, and it's probably a bit expensive, but have a look at that. Looks like they're doing some teaching around finances. But yeah, it's quite expensive. Yeah, and stuff like that. So I found Reforge to be a really good tool. For 2 years, I had my company pay for it, so that was great. I don't access it anymore because it's like $1,500 US or something. And then I usually just learn from how others have navigated different. So Lenny's podcast is my favorite, and I won't listen to all episodes. I will listen to the ones that are relevant to me based on the title. And that's probably the best podcast, I would say, because they do get into very specific things around. I was listening to one the other day where a CPO talked about how she had to manage conflict between 2 VPs in her company, like that. And she practically talked about exactly how she did it. So yeah, I think it's having more experienced people that you can access and soundboard ideas off. That has been the most helpful thing for me. Can you please explain relationship between project manager? Yes. Okay. Project manager, product owner, product manager, and scrum master. Yes. Okay. So I'm personally going to lump product owner and product manager into one. some companies have both, and I think that's probably companies that are quite large and they just like to split up ownership so that product owner might look after the tactical product work and product manager might think about like longer term strategy. I think that should be one person. You should own your product completely. So that's product. So the product manager is the person who makes the decisions and is responsible for the actual product. So if this is my app, then I make the decisions for what new features we are introducing into the app, how we want to grow the app. I will work with someone, depending on the size of the company, on product marketing for the app, pricing. I will basically have input to everything related to that product, growing it, and the decisions for the capabilities of the product, right? That's why I'm the product owner, product manager. Now, I will work with I haven't necessarily done this because not all companies have project managers, but a project manager is not responsible for deciding anything to do with my app. The project manager is responsible for making sure stuff happens on time. So timelines, deadlines, managing risks, managing dependencies, managing people. Like if they're basically think a project manager might get involved when there are lots of people involved in something and you need one person to keep them all in sync. Okay. So project manager is more generic in that you can apply a project manager to any kind of project, whereas a product manager is usually specific to like owning usually like a technology product. It can be physical or software. And then the project manager will not be responsible or accountable for anything to do with the product either. And then Scrum Master, I also haven't worked with a Scrum Master. So I don't know why companies have so many of these different roles, because everywhere I have worked, I, as the PM, I've been the BA, I've been the Scrum Master, I've been the PO. Like we've only just had PMs. We've never had any of these other roles. So I think in many cases they are unnecessary. But my understanding of a Scrum Master is they basically help the developers in running their sprints. That's the short version, making sure that once the product manager decides what let's say new feature needs to be built, they will break that down into how that needs to happen, and it's a Scrum Master's responsibility to make sure the sprints that the development team has planned actually run smoothly. I think that's my understanding of it anyway. How will you improve your shopping experience at a grocery shopping market? Yes. Could you share light on how you would have approached? So I actually have a video. Let me bring up my video. I have a video on my YouTube channel that goes over answering vague questions like this. Like essentially, it's like a strategy question. And while I find that, the link that I shared before, which is Try Exponent, they go over hundreds of questions, like vague questions like this. And it's vague on purpose because basically for here is your thought process, so that basically you don't want to jump into improvement ideas. No, you want to start with questions like, what is the business objective? Or like, what is the understanding the, almost starting at the top, what is the product, the vision of the company? Then what are the different product objectives that can feed into the vision and objective of the company? Okay, so if I'm owning shopping experience, here are some ways in which I could improve that key product objective. And then let me brainstorm some different ways in which I could improve the shopping experience. So maybe there are ways in which you improve existing experience versus create a new experience versus A/B test something else. Like there are basically, you want to brainstorm all the different ways and possibilities. And then you want to basically work off a process of elimination. And like you kind of need to show you're working. It's been a while since I've done any kind of interview, but I I did a pretty good job with this video. And it was actually based on a real interview that I did for a job that I got. So yeah, I found it now. Let me, oh my goodness. But yeah, the purpose, so that's my video there, product manager strategy interview. But it's basically your approach is the most important thing. The actual answer you come up with. So your answer on how this is how I will improve the grocery experience, that's not the point. The point is making sure that you don't jump to those suggestions and that you logically are thinking through how you might actually work with the teams and people around you. So asking the right questions, gathering the right data, asking about the objectives of the product and the business, brainstorming different ideas, prioritizing those ideas, and then doing the work required to come up with like a final recommendation. So I go through that in that video. That will be the best way for you to come across that, and look at Try Exponent because they're really good for that too. In software development lifecycle, sorry, I'm not sure I understand that question. You might have to elaborate. Oh, wait, I'm not sure if that question is related. Okay. Can you explain how PO and product manager work together? So I was just talking about this before. In my humble opinion, product manager and product owner should be one role. The way I have heard people talk about it, because I've never worked anywhere that had both roles, I've heard people talk about it in that the product manager will own the long-term strategy and like longer-term roadmap, but the product owner will actually be the one working on the product with the team, like the development team. I just don't understand how you can divide responsibilities that way. So in my opinion, a product manager should own everything to do with a product lifecycle. Okay. How is the product job market going? Now I haven't been looking personally, but I think in Australia it's been pretty dry. I think a lot of tech companies have been struggling. So yeah, I think it's definitely not what it used to be, but I'm definitely not keeping up with it. So I'm sometimes scared to talk in meetings to provide my point of view. I feel you. Could you share any tips to get over this? Yes. So, I mean, I hate the fact that it's the people who are the loudest in a meeting are the ones that no, let me reword that. It is really hard sometimes to speak up when you are surrounded by others who are naturally able to do so. I think everyone thinks in a different way, and you might be a really extroverted person, but in a meeting, you might be scared to share your point of view, right? Because maybe you process information differently. So firstly, remember that, right? You don't have to be the one who talks in meetings, as long as you find another way to make sure you are heard. I think, I don't know if you work from home, but I actually think virtual meetings has made this easier. So if you're on Zoom or if you're on Teams or whatever tool you use, using the option to put your hand up is really good. So like no one can ignore that. When someone puts their hand up in a Zoom, and I've seen people use that really effectively. So I would say leverage like the tools that you have to just put your hand up virtually in the meeting. Secondly, use the chat function. So if you're scared to verbally provide your point of view, write it in the chat box in your virtual meeting. I'm assuming your meeting is virtual because I feel like that's the default now. So think about how, again, you can leverage the tool that you're using. I think that's a huge improvement for people who naturally struggle with that. Next, another option is if you have someone within your team who you are really comfortable with, maybe if you're able to confide that in them, they will give you, like they might when they see that you're in a meeting and you're trying to speak up, or that you might want to, maybe they can play that role for you and actually prompt you or ask you a question in that meeting. I think it's really useful to have like an ally, basically, that you get along with, someone that you trust, and you can say, hey, I really want to speak up in some of these meetings we're going to, but I'm not quite sure when to interject. Do you mind in this next meeting we have to just ask me if I have anything to say, or ask me a specific question so I can respond? Like, I think that's a very useful tactic. And then if you still like, I'd be curious to understand like why you're scared. Is it because you think your point of view is wrong, or like you're not sure if your point of view is correct? Because by the way, your point of view is always valid. So maybe it's just reminding yourself and working on that, like your confidence in those sessions is just because people are speaking loudly and speaking a lot doesn't mean they know anything. Okay. So remind yourself that, because it is such a misinterpreted trait. And I read this incredible article some time ago that people who, I'm going to link it for you. Hold on. It changed. So I'm naturally quieter in meetings as well. I'm not afraid to speak up, but I'm naturally quieter. And when I read this article, it changed my perspective on that. And this guy basically talks about how quiet people are like have a superpower in meetings. And so I think if you can start exposing yourself to things like readings like this, I'll link it for you here now. Oh, it's not free. Then it might help you just build some of your own internal confidence when you go into meetings like this. How do I share this? Okay. I'm not sure if you'll be able to read it, but you can search for it and maybe it'll come up somewhere else. And one of the things, he has some tips in this that I recommend you go through, but he also says that if you are unable to speak up in a meeting, the most important thing you can do is follow up after the meeting. So maybe you are that person who is like a powerhouse at capturing the action items and notes. And maybe you're digesting your thoughts during that meeting. And then I think being quick is the key. Right afterwards, you send a follow-up to everyone. And writing stuff down is actually going to be the thing that actually brings more weighting to your views than just competing with people who are loud. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this topic, as you can tell. Read that article. It's very good. Hi, Nika. Any tips for new PO, starting a new job? What activities should we prioritize when landing? What conversations should we have with Okay. So, okay. So I think there's a few things, like first and foremost, I think not changing anything, especially if it's like an established team. I believe I have a video. I'm actually very impressed with the library of videos I've built up over 3 years, because I actually forget the videos I've made. But I believe I have a video on what you should do in your first, one second, let me see. Oh, I thought I did. What you should do in like your first 30 or 60 days. One second. Have a look on my channel okay, I can't find it right now, but I'm pretty sure I have a video about that. So one is, you definitely want to meet with all the possible, like, not just product people, right? Like not just your product lead or whoever it is. I think it's important to meet with someone from engineering, or multiple people from engineering, from sales, from marketing, customer service, especially, I think is key. If you can shadow your customer service team when you have the luxury of being new, then you get to really see what the problems are in the product, because customers are obviously writing in and having issues and like, needing help. And I think that is the gold way to understand the state of the product. I think one key activity to prioritize is actually just using the product yourself if you can. Sometimes it's difficult when it's a B2B product, but getting your own account, not even getting the company to give you an account, like go through your product documentation, follow the setup process, just act like you're a customer and see what doesn't make sense. That's really helpful. And I think asking all the questions you can possibly ask, because you have the luxury of doing that when you're still new and things don't make sense. And yeah, that's kind of what I would say. What conversation should we have with a product lead manager? Look, I think it depends on the depending on the product will depend on how complex and onerous and how much time it will take to fully onboard to the product. But I would say in my experience, it can take quite a lot of time to fully understand a product, especially if it's an existing one that's quite mature, that has customers. So I think it would be, as you start to talk to different people, it would be great to start coming up with a picture of what is important to everyone. Because as you know, engineering might have a different opinion to product, to another product person will have a different view. Talk to engineers in the team as well, because they might have a different view. They might feel like certain technical things aren't being prioritized. So I think when you're new, people will confide in you and tell you things like as they really see them. And then you can run your views on that past the product lead or the PM and make sure they give you access to all the possible information or feedback or backlog and things that they already have on the product. I think understanding the product strategy and roadmap is really important, because I've seen so many times where PMs are expected to come up with a roadmap, but they have no idea what the roadmap should achieve, because you need the product strategy to achieve the roadmap. Sorry, you need the product strategy to know what the roadmap should include. So ask about those top level things as well. Anyway, and talk to customers. Being a new PM of a product, customers love that. You can use your newbie card to just go to a customer and be like, hey, show me how you use this, why you use it. Tell me other problems you have with it. And again, because you are new, a customer will see this as like this massive opportunity just to tell you everything that you should do with the product. So like, you don't have to figure it out for yourself. Okay. What else is there? Oh yeah. Oh, tech cleanse. I haven't heard of that term before, but it's not a nice word, is it? Tech cleanse. What would you say are the key skills? Oh, sorry. What would you say the key skills are to have as a PM? Did you ever go through a period in your career you thought, I'm not sure if this is for me? So I haven't been through a period of time where I thought this isn't for me, but I have been through that feeling. My video I posted yesterday is actually kind of about this topic. Is I've definitely wondered if the product I am owning or the product space that I am in, if that is right for me, and whether working in like a particular company or industry is for me. So that's been where my questioning has come from. I've always naturally aligned to product because I'm kind of everywhere. I'm not very good at anything, honestly, but I'm decently good at lots of stuff, and I get bored very quickly. So PM roles are varied enough where you're doing lots of different things constantly. So it's always suited me personally. What would you say the key skills are to have? Okay. My gosh, I probably have like 3 videos on key skills, but you put me on the spot for some reason. I think firstly, and I don't want to be stereotypical and use the word communication, so I won't. But you need to be able to talk to different people in their language and understand their perspective from where they sit. There are so many people who cannot do that, who have their own view on something, and that is the way that it is. But your job as a PM is really to empathize with the customer first and foremost, but to some extent, you need to also empathize with engineering, design, and obviously your product, or you're representing the customer. And you also need to like not empathize with, but represent the business's needs, right? So you're kind of that person who has to take everyone's objectives and views into account to come up with what is best for the customer. So having the ability to genuinely put yourself in someone else's shoes, which I'm just going to say, I feel like females are better at doing that more naturally. But I think that's number one. And if you can do that, I think it makes everything else so much easier, because if you can empathize with someone else and see things from their perspective, hopefully that means you can have a good relationship with them. And having a good relationship with engineering, design, marketing, like everyone, is going to make your life so much easier as a PM. So I think that's a very important one. Secondly, key skill. Now, I don't know if decision making is a skill, but you basically need to be very, very comfortable making constant decisions, big and small, like minor, big, medium, small, massive decisions. And I think if you're not able to, I think it's a skill that comes with time, but if you're not able to like acquire that skill eventually or get comfortable with it or enjoy it, like I enjoy making decisions because it means we can move on. Rather than deferring decisions, because it kind of just weighs on my mind. But I think that's a skill as well. A lot of the skills are related to people, like how you interact with people, how you manage people, how you influence people, but also like communication also means how you talk about your product, like how you convey its value, how you convey its value to a customer versus how you convey that to engineering, because they're going to build it. So you want them to be excited. So it's all people. Like if people didn't exist, we wouldn't have any problems. Could you share how to become an SME of a product or feature? Time is really all I can say. Time. Like I can give you a personal example. So I was the product manager of a Salesforce integration. Very technical product. I'd never used Salesforce in my entire life. Salesforce, if you know, is a complex beast of a platform. And yeah, I was also not very technical at the time. So a lot of upskilling that I had to do. And it was also a very business critical integration for many of our customers. I went from being the least knowledgeable in that space to being able to talk about Salesforce with my eyes closed, being able to talk about Salesforce better than our developers. But it took me 2.5 years, like to get to that point. Like I gradually improved over time, but suddenly everything clicked. And that's all I can say. Like you have to use the product, you have to talk to people who use the product, you have to understand use cases, you have to appreciate and understand how something was built in a certain way. You have to understand how competitors and the market is doing similar things. That's what it takes. It takes time. And I think it takes looking at knowing that product and feature from very many different lenses. I constantly pump out new feature requests. Oh, sorry, I can't read today. I constantly pump out new feature ideas, sprint after sprint. So engineers always have something to do. What do your engineers do during the gap when you're taking, great question. I love this. So I love that your engineers have a gap because I've never heard of, I mean, I get what you mean. Technically, there's always something to do, but are they doing the most valuable thing? So basically, you need to always be ahead of them. So when you're doing research and ideation, you should be doing research and ideation 6 months ahead of, or whenever. Like, I don't know, depend. Your timeline depends on many other things, but the thing that you want your engineers to work on today is something you ideally would have done the research and ideation for like months ago. So that's the way. I always say that the development team is operating today, but I live in the future. And that's kind of how it is. You to avoid them having the gap, is how you manage that. But also, it shouldn't be all on you. If you have a good relationship with your engineering team, and especially the engineering manager or like the tech lead or whoever is managing the developers, that's something for you both to figure out together, right? So having a plan for what your quarter looks like, because there are always things that engineering want to do and don't have the time to do. So there's two things that I've seen work well from a design and engineering perspective. So one, maybe we carve aside a sprint if for engineering to do all the little things that they don't ever get to do, things that don't necessarily add customer value or product value, but they are important to engineering to get right. Technical debt, fixing up small bugs, or like tidying up the code or whatever. And then we also used to do blueberry sprints, and this is more design led, but there will be really small things that a designer wants to improve in the product that you just probably won't prioritize because it's honestly like moving a line from here to here isn't going to matter. But that stuff is important to a designer. So we would have blueberry sprints where the designer would plan the majority of the sprint, and it would be us just doing all the tiny things that design wise we never got to do at any other point in time. So that's a way to like fill the gap, but ideally you're never filling the gap because you are planning for this stuff in advance, if you know what I mean. What is your approach to the design thinking methodology? Do you lead the problem kickoff meeting? Honestly, I'm not a huge methodology person. I haven't ever really worked on anything or anywhere that's been very methodology driven. I have attended like design thinking workshops and stuff. It's interesting. Like currently, I've been going through like what the work I'm doing at the moment, having this not debate, this conversation a lot with a few other people in the company, and we're talking about whether something should be sales led versus product led versus customer led. It's yes, I from my understanding of design methodology, like a lot of it is around solving problems. So I think that's the most important thing, but I can't say I have used it closely enough to really have a strong opinion on it. Do you lead the problem kickoff meetings? I think the PM, whatever you want to call the meeting, I think the PM should own everything. Like your job as the PM is to like keep moving stuff forward. And if that means you need to initiate something like kicking off a new product initiative, I like to call it a product initiative versus a problem kickoff. Yeah, I would kick that off because you also want to set the context for everyone. You definitely don't want design kicking it off because maybe unless it's for a specific reason, because maybe they lack the context on like the business objective for why you're doing something. You can have design lead it as long as you have that input. You don't want engineering leading it because they will come at it from a different perspective, but you'll probably come at it from the customer's perspective and like the business's perspective. So yeah. A Pav. Oh, sorry, your name. Oh, sorry. Name come up funny. A Pav, your product backlog should be busy. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, I'm like, what's a gap? Give me a gap. Your product backlog should be busy. Yeah, there should always be shit to pull from. Yeah. But I think the key thing is like, you don't want to just pull stuff from it. It's like, is that stuff really valuable? But there's always got to be stuff. What do you do to make sure the decisions you make are the right decisions? Ooh. I don't think you ever really know if something is the right decision. So I think one thing is sometimes making decisions quickly, like as in not putting off decisions for too long, because the longer you put it off, unless you're actively like trying to get data or inputs to inform that decision, like you're just delaying learning if that decision was right or wrong. Secondly, not making decisions in isolation. So soundboarding your decisions with other people, either people who have a different perspective or people who have more experience. I think that's one of the best things you can do. I'm not going to say leaning on data like too much, because sometimes you don't have the data, so you got to go with what you have. I think the biggest thing, I don't have my book here. I'm currently reading a book, the Diary of the CEO book, and he talks about two types of decisions. I think they're called type A and type B. And he's talking about it more in the context of life, but actually, no, he's talking about it in the context of business, and it also applies to product. Type A decisions are irreversible. Type B decisions are reversible. So it's and most decisions are type B decisions. So it's very rare that you will make a decision that is so bad and it can't be undone. So I think just having those, like for a product, for example, if you're releasing something and you're not sure if it's the right thing to do, releasing it in a way that the risk is managed, so that you can turn the feature off if something goes wrong, having like a feature flag. Yeah, and then you'll just learn. I don't know if you really know otherwise. Oh, thank you. Fun questions. Yeah, fun questions. This is fun. It's almost 8 o'clock. I think I'm going to end this in a few minutes. Went for much longer than I expected, because I honestly thought no one would turn up. Do you have your own favorite modern style product discoveries? I'm not sure what you mean. Do you have your own favorite modern style product discoveries outside just casual interviews? I'm not sure what you mean by that one. Yeah, maybe quick explanation on that, please. What's a blueberry sprint? So a blueberry sprint, the reason it's called blueberry is because it means tiny, tiny things. And the way, like, basically have one sprint or set time where your team works on tiny, tiny things. So you know how there are like 1-point tasks, or like tasks that will take engineers like 2 hours to do, but like those things can pile up. So a blueberry sprint, we used to do it only in the design, like for design work, but it's basically having one sprint that is dedicated to just a bunch of like 1-point or tiny, tiny little tasks. That's why they're called blueberries, because they're like really small. Yeah. Cool. I think I'm gonna wrap up in a few minutes, but this was so fun. I think doing my first live was like breaking the ice. And then now that I've done one, I think I can do more. Oh, I think he's asking your favorite product discovery. Oh, okay. Oh, right. How do I do product discovery? Oh, okay. Let's see. Product discovery. I'm a big researcher, just like generally myself. So I love stalking competitors. And this is just even with like side projects as well. I love research on my own. I love actually just using products myself and seeing how they work. So that's one thing for me. Outside of interviews, what else is there? I think interviews, like building on interviews, actually showing customers something or showing users something. So like prototypes, I'm a huge prototype fan. And I think if you have the ability to, in my dream product organization, we would always have like one stream of work that was purely experimentation and purely prototyping. So imagine you come up with an idea rather than doing all like your typical product research and like talking to customers and then like competitor research and spending all that time. What if you could bypass all of that in like a risk-free way? That's why it's like a separate team. And all they do is create rapid prototypes. It's actually called rapid prototyping, the idea. and then you show that to customers. You don't spend time doing anything else. You quickly design, interactive prototype maybe, and then you just get it in front of customers. I think that would be my favorite style of discovery, because you have something tangible, you've actually put more thought into it because you've designed it and you put it in front of people. So yeah. Yay. Okay, I think I'm gonna wrap up. Thanks, guys and girls, whoever you are. This was really fun. And yeah, I definitely will do one again. Maybe I'll do one once a month or something. And yeah, thank you so much for your questions. They were very good questions, ones that definitely put me on the spot. So I'll note down some of the questions mentioned and I'll try and make some follow-up videos. But the next videos I have coming out, one is on PM career levels. And let me just look at my YouTube backlog. One is on PM career ladder. So like the expectations of each level, the experience at each level, and things like that. And then I'm also thinking of doing a video on how you can create your own product experience without having to rely on an actual job, because yeah. And then yeah, my problem is I've got way too many video ideas. Like this could be my full-time job, making videos, but I just wouldn't have money to survive. That's all good. My internet crashed. Sorry, there's a lot of product discovery techniques out there. Yeah. I don't know if you got my answer. You may have dropped off. I'll just quickly summarize. I said that in my ideal world, my favorite product discovery technique would be rapid prototyping, where you actually create like a separate team and all they do is they create very quick prototypes and they put it in front of customers to get real feedback on something tangible. You don't waste any other time on any other techniques, no research, no nothing. You come up with an idea that, there's consensus that it's a vibe, like it seems like a decent idea. You just whip something together, a design, a mock-up, maybe an interactive prototype, and you just get it out there. It's like not an MVP, obviously, but it's the design equivalent of that. That would be, I don't know if there's a term for it. I think it's called rapid prototyping. That would be my favorite. And in my ideal world, every company would do that, like just experiment. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up now. I don't know how to end this, but I guess we just jump off. Yeah, thanks all for watching and thanks for following along, and appreciate, I'm gonna star that one. Yeah, appreciate all the engagement on this live, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Have a nice day, evening, afternoon, night, morning, wherever you are. And yeah, we're gonna head off now. Bye. Bye. Oh, thanks so much, 19FizzZ91. I don't know how to say that. Sorry, Shake, we are ending the live. I apologize. Okay, see you all. Bye. Bye.